Well, Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel visiting some of those wounded in the Navy Yard shooting rampage after laying a wreath at the U.S. Navy Memorial. Meanwhile, the wife of one of the victims explains how she found out about her husband getting caught in the crossfire.
I left a message on his phone. He called me back and he said, "Are you sitting down?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said that your husband got shot.
Poor woman, your heart just breaks for her and for all of these families today. There are real people and families behind all of this, and it is just so heartbreaking to think about them and to listen to them. And I'm joined now by Captain Chuck Nash, a retired U.S. Navy captain and a Fox News military analyst, and Mike Barrett, a former Naval Reserve intelligence officer, as well as a former Defense Department intelligence officer. And I'm sure for both of you, it is heartbreaking to see that, folks in the larger military family that you are part of are going through this today. Captain Nash, let me start with you. How do we prevent this from happening?
Yeah, I was just watching that lady on the monitor before we went on air, and it truly is sad. And it's that way all over the Capital Region today because there's so many people who go to work in the morning believing that they're in protected environments, when in fact you can't offer that kind of protection without shutting down the system. It would be so laborious to just 3,000 people worked in that building. So if you took 1 minute per person to screen people in, it would take 5 hours or so to get in the building. So you have to assume that the people on the team are good people, and you have to take reasonable security precautions, but you can't protect against a madman. It's just impossible.
I know, but Mike, when you look at this stuff, and of course 2020 is always, everything is much clearer in hindsight, but you go back to this situation, he had 2 arrests, he did not have a conviction, he had a history of mental health issues. So you don't have to scan everybody for a minute as they come through, but you have to have some sort of list, some sort of way to say, oh, hold on, who are you again? Something that trips some wire that helps us to stop this kind of stuff.
Well, I think, ideally we would be able to have that, but unfortunately you just can't read people's minds. So I think the captain's quite right. What you end up having to do is probably go to a system of more random inspections so that even if people are approved to work in that workspace, you don't check all of them every day, but you have some randomized security measures so that people don't feel they can just bring in anything they want on any given day. That cuts down on the likelihood of an event happening at that particular location. One other important point here is that just in the last 4 or 5 years, we've reduced dramatically the stigma of members of the military going and getting therapy. We have any number of soldiers and sailors and airmen that have been out there with PTSD from their battlefield experiences. It used to be considered a disqualifying event for your security clearances. So we've actually made a lot of progress in understanding that people need help when they're in that kind of a situation. I would hate to see a knee-jerk reaction that went through and cut all those people out. We quite frankly wouldn't be able to field the forces we need to protect this nation if we said everybody getting therapy for PTSD and issues like that, was unfit for duty.
Very interesting point. What do you think about that, Captain Nash?
Well, according to an Associated Press release this morning, he was hearing voices and there were some other elements of bizarre behavior going on. So the system, unfortunately, is not near responsive enough. It lags. There's a latency issue in there. So as much as we would like to think that things are Johnny on the spot and information's flowing freely and everybody's running it like a small business, it's not a small business. It's a huge, massive bureaucracy that has interconnecting links and protocols for passing information. And when you get into the area of healthcare, and things have to be HIPAA compliant, the Privacy Act, oh my goodness, then things really slow down. So really what has to happen is we've got to back up and reassess how we view security. Yeah. And if security is an outer ring that once penetrated, you have a bunch of unarmed, defenseless people, that's not a good plan.
No, it's not. And we got to have enough room in these situations for common sense to prevail in as much as possible. Thank you, gentlemen. We're going to leave it there. Mike and Captain Nash, thank you very much.